Hi, I'm John F. Allen. And I'm R.J. Sullivan. And we're the Two Towers.
Greetings and welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. I'm your host, Tower 1, John F. Allen.
And I'm Tower 2, R.J. Sullivan.
Today, we have a very special guest and someone I have been looking forward to meeting and looking forward to speaking with for quite a while. And that is the artist extraordinaire, Fred Hembeck. And we welcome you to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Yes, thank you. Fred, you're a little bit different from our past guests up to this point in that we've not actually met you in person. Hopefully that may happen someday, but most especially thank you for taking the time and agreeing to chat with a couple of strangers. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, that's okay. You guys may be strangers to me, but apparently I'm not strangers to you, so that works out.
Fair enough.
Absolutely. You have an illustrious career, one that I've followed for quite a while. I've enjoyed your work. It always has been entertaining for me, and it's very iconic. I can't say how many people that I know who are fans of the comic book industry who don't know who you are or who aren't familiar with your work. And being a visual artist myself, I took a lot of inspiration from your work. I'm kind of fanboying just a little bit here, so bear with me.
That's okay. That was my whole deal anyway, fanboy.
So I wanted to talk to you about, from what I've read, you started out seeking work as a traditional comic book artist before you started to embark on your career creating parodies of traditional comic book characters from across notable publishing companies. Would you tell our viewers and listeners how you got started, your artistic background, and what led you to your parody profession?
Well, I got started because I, really liked comic books when I was a little kid, and read them pretty much voraciously throughout my throughout the 60s and the 70s, and I wanted to be a cartoonist. So I went to college, took some art courses. Unfortunately, I graduated college just as the Joe Kubert cartooning school opened up. And at that point, it wasn't, I'm not going to go back to college again. I just got out. That would have been really perfect for me, but it didn't happen. And I put together, a portfolio of standard type superhero artwork, which is what I intended to do. And this is back in 1977, I believe it was, the summer after we got out of college. And I went around, and I lived on Long Island, so I wasn't too far from, the big companies in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I took went back to my parents' house and lived there for, the summer, and trotted my portfolio onto the train and into New York City to show to people at Marvel and at DC. I never actually saw anybody at Marvel. They just said, leave it overnight and we'll look at it and we'll tell you tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll leave my artwork there. And, nothing came of that. But then I got to take it up to the DC offices and show it to the art director, Mr. Vince Colletta, who, as it turned out, was maybe my least favorite artist of the time. And I was always, there weren't many people's artwork I didn't like, but he was one of them. And all of a sudden I go, oh my God, this is the guy who's judging me. So, he looked through the stuff and he just kind of told me what I was doing wrong, and then just kind of blew me off and said, sorry, I'll tell you this. The truth is, he actually said, and he used a hand gesture while he was doing it, I tell you I don't want to tell you you'd make it in comics, kid, because I'd just be jerking you off. And he made the hand gesture. And then Julie Schwartz came into the room, and then they, sorry, nice to meet you, goodbye, and out the door I went. And I got on the train, And I drove home. I mean, I, took an hour, and I was like, just really like, it was kind of a freaky experience. Got out, got into my car, drove out of the parking lot, and just pulled in front of another car because I was like not really thinking too well. But they stopped, and I made it out without a problem. And I always thought that I was like, the fifth challenger then, because you remember the challengers who of the unknown who defied death. And so I defied it, and I went home and I said, yeah, I'm going to make another portfolio. I'm not going to let that Vince Coletta tell me I can't do this. And I never really quite got onto the next portfolio because I started writing a lot of letters just to keep drawing to my friends in college and doing illustrated letters. And I came up with a little cartoony version of myself. And so I was, writing these little cartoon letters to my ex-roommates and stuff because there was no email back then, obviously. Mm-hmm. And one day I just decided, hey, why don't I try this little style I have here with my little caricature and do a little interview of Spider-Man and then send it off to the Comics Buyer's Guide, because that was a weekly publication, and I thought maybe I'd get a little bit noticed there. But I still was planning to, go ahead with the other plan of the superhero artwork, like, all the fabulous Neil Adams. I spent a month copying Neil Adams stuff. I have a whole notebook of it somewhere.
That must have been devastating, because back then, if you wanted to be a comic artist, you had two places to go, and you were just told off by one of them.
It's true. I actually sent a few things off to Charlton Comics, and I believe it was Kitchen Sink as well, but nothing came of that. Got a letter back from one of them saying, no, thank you. But yeah, so I sent the thing off to Alan Light at the Buyer's Guide, and he liked it, and he published it, and other people seemed to like it, and next thing you know, he was asking me for more. And within a few months, I was doing a whole bunch of these things, because it was fun to draw in this kind of a goofy style, which I just kind of made up, and also express my opinions, because having read comics at that point for about 15 years, I had a lot of opinions. Mm-hmm. Not all of them I'll stand by today, but I did have those opinions, and I like jokes too. I liked, another big influence on me was, TV sitcoms, and also some of my favorite humor comics like Little Lulu and Dennis the Menace and Little Archie. I love those comics. And I got a letter from the people at DC, not Vince Coletta, asking me to do a little strip in their Daily Planet page, because they figured this is like a newspaper, it should have a comic strip. And I did that, and that kind of gave me wider exposure. Of course, before that, I had done a lot of, I think my first collection from Eclipse came out because we didn't know what to call the strip in the Daily Planet DC page. But they said, hey, look, your book that came out from Eclipse, the collection, it's called Hembeck. Why don't we use your name? It's an unusual name. It's not something you see every day. So we did, and that's how my name kind of got out there.
Very cool. Well, this probably won't surprise you entirely when I tell you how I discovered who you were and the impression you made on me. So in 1982, I was 14 years old at home in Indianapolis. We didn't have any real comic shops, but I was a huge Spider-Man fan. I mean, you could go out to the drugstore and buy them off the rack, of course, but this was before there were many reliable comic shops that you could go to, shortly before, and I wasn't driving yet anyway. So I was a subscriber. So I had like Marvel Team Up and Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man coming to my mailbox every month, and of course I would tear into them. And you may have experienced the way they wrap them, sort of this fold over envelope, so that you
yes, I subscribed at one point too. So yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very simple to just kind of push on the bottom and then check it out immediately. And so of course I got that Spectacular Spider-Man number 86 during Assistant Editors Month. no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
You know, and pull it out. I'm going, oh my gosh, what the heck did they do?
Yeah.
You know, and there's your parody art, and then there's Spider-Man and Black Cat in the corner, kind of commenting on it and everything. And I didn't know what to make of it. But it was so different, but so delightful, and it was such a great read because it read, if I remember, you have like a little introduction, and then it gets into the story proper, and it pretty much just reads like a straight story, but it's got this funny book parody style to it throughout the issue, and it was so much fun, and I absolutely loved it. And truthfully, you know, and then I'd see your stuff show up here and there, and then after I stopped collecting, I wasn't sure exactly where that all went. I'm glad to hear that you've developed such a name for yourself in that style and everything. But can I just first of all say that Assistant Editors Month might have been one of the coolest comic events that I can remember. And when I look back, there were so many of them, but that was such a neat thing. How did they approach you about that? And how did that come about?
Yeah, that was quite a unique thing that they've never really tried to duplicate, which is probably good, but you know.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Mantlo, actually, the very first thing I'd ever had published in a comic before the DC strips even was a full-page illustrated letter that I sent to an Iron Man, which Bill was writing at the time. I believe it was number 112. Actually, the original letter was all kind of done in different colors, but he said, you know, we can't really publish it that way. Could you redo it? And so I redid it, and I'd already written a number of other letters to Bill before that, and other writers. I was writing a lot of letters, thinking maybe this will be a way to get into comics, even though I was an artist. I don't know why I'm writing letters, but okay. So Bill knew me and liked my stuff. So when this assistant editors thing came around, he said, why don't we, you know, get this Hembeck guy to do it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Even though, you know, it was kind of rough, some of it, because I'd never really drawn big old fight scenes before. So there was some redoing of pages there. And I always thought it was very odd that I think that was the very first time Spider-Man revealed his identity to anybody, you know, the Black Cat in there. And I'm like, and I'm drawing it? You know, shouldn't like somebody who's like one of the shouldn't John Romita do this or something, or at least Gil Kane at least? Or
that title was so hot at the time because Black Cat was all over it, and the story was really, really cooking at that point. And so they dropped you right into the middle of all that drama, and it was you know, it was such a delightful change. And you know, that's still, you know, I may not remember exactly what the issue was right before, what the issue was right after, but boy, I sure remember pulling that comic out.
Well, yeah, thanks. It did make an impression. I'm sure not everybody was happy with it, but what are you going to do? So that's how that came out. Yeah, that was the deal there.
So did they really? I mean, I know it's scripted that Al Milgram's pencils were rejected. I assume that was just scripted, right? They didn't really turn the guy down, did they?
What? Pardon me?
It's scripted in there that Al Milgram's pencils were rejected for that month. I assume.
Nah, that's all a bunch of hooey.
Yeah. Okay. What? I'm so shocked.
And not only is that a bunch of hooey, most of the time I dealt with editors, not assistant editors.
Gotcha.
So that was all kind of like you know.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite comic book memories from back in the day.
Well, I appreciate that, even though I think some of the drawing in there makes me cringe.
I remember seeing it, and I was just like, wow. And I was, and The Fly too. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. So I think I read it, like, after I picked up that issue, I read it like about 3 or 4 times that day, just going over the artwork, because that's what I did, you know, because I was an aspiring artist at that time.
Sure.
So I was just seeing, you know, taking in all the lines and stuff. And I was really, I was very entertained by it. It was something that I'll never forget. And that kind of leads into the next question I have for you. So, is there any particular work of yours which stands out above the rest? And if so, could you please tell us about it and why?
Of my work, you mean?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What I like the best of all?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like best of all, no one else seems to get excited about, but that's okay. And that is those stories I did of Petey, it was called Petey, The Adventures of Peter Parker long before he became Spider-Man. And they were done in the style of the Dennis the Menace, Little Lulu, Little Archie comics that I loved so much as a kid. And they snuck them in, into the back of Marvel Tales for a while. And then there was a couple in Peter Parker and Spider-Man Gallery. I don't know. They all did get collected in a paperback that I came out a few years ago of my work, which was great. It was nice to hear. But yeah, I always enjoyed those because I tried to make them, work in the sense that he's a little kid, but he would keep running into people that would be important in his future, like Doctor Strange and Matt Murdock and little Matt Murdock and stuff. And I tried to make them consistent with what we knew about the characters, while at the same time making jokes and all that kind of stuff. So I always like those stories. Those are my favorite. But then wait, I should say one other thing. There was a 10-page Spider-Man story that's also in the book, and also the House of Hem thing that came out 5 or 6 years ago, that I did around 10 or 11 years ago, which had the Sinister Six and also the Human Torch, and it was almost a real Spider-Man story, and that was a lot of fun because my favorite comic probably is the Spider-Man Annual #1, which has the Sinister Six. So that was a big thrill. And by that time, I drew Spider-Man better than I did when you guys were wee lads.
Cool. Besides Marvel and DC, obviously, what other publishers have you worked with, and what were your experiences there?
Well, I've worked with a lot of publishers, and most of them just once. I don't know why that always seems to be. Yeah, I don't know why that was, but it always seemed to happen. I wrote an Archie Comics Super Teens adventure that Brett Blevins and Terry Austin drew, which I was able to use Mad Dr. Doom from the Little Archie Comics. That was a big fun thing. Did a Munden's Bar story in the back of a Grimjack issue that was a kind of a parody of the Mary Tyler Moore show that was from First Comics. Eclipse put together my first collection. That worked out okay. And Fanico put together my other, not Fanagraphics, but Fanico. It put together the other collections I did. A couple of years ago, Image put together this giant omnibus of most of that stuff and other things as well. I'm trying to think, who else did I work for? It's weird. I never had anything in Dark Horse until about a year or two ago when I had a pinup in, I can't think of the name of the book, but I did have a pinup in there.
You had a pinup in there?
Yeah. So I don't know, everybody, no real problems.
Very, very
everybody
cool.
wants to say, oh yeah, we used Hembeck, we used them once. Now we can move on to something else. Marvel is the one who keeps me busy, though. Not real busy, but busier than most.
Right, and their personality as a publisher, it comes off like they like to kind of do tongue-in-cheek things. They've been doing that for a while with themselves.
Oh yeah,
it seems like they don't take themselves quite as seriously as other publishers. But then again, with Stan the Man, anytime that you saw him, like, I had the video of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, right? And he and John Buscema were sitting there and going through stuff. And I mean, he had John Buscema shaking his head and like trying not to laugh, but the things that he was saying, and he was just such a larger than life personality. And you saw that come through the comics. So that particular publisher, that doesn't surprise me at all, that they would be utilizing you more than anyone else. And I think that it was a good fit for the work that you produced. With the characters that you drew, and it was a good fit all the time for me. as a fan?
Yeah, Marvel Comics probably. Even though I started with the Kitty comics and then went on to the Superman, it was when I got Fantastic Four #4 off of that's the thing that really kept me going. And Stan Lee probably had a bigger influence on me than even the artists, because I just loved the way he communicated with us, especially in the early days when what didn't become so how would you say, not predictable, but after a while it became kind of a shtick.
Mm-hmm.
But initially it was like, wow, it's as opposed to the Superman comics when Mort Weisinger's berating you for trying to call him on a boo-boo or something. But Stan was like acting like your pal, and he was an older guy who understood you. Right. And he knew you enjoyed the comics, but he was talking to you in the captions like, you're going to have a good time with this. Yeah, that really did it for me. Kept me going in the comic world, even through my teens when everybody else was like, get rid of those comics, you're a teenager now. But I never did.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that
yep.
Personally. So one of the things that also struck me with you as an artist was the fact that you caricaturize yourself in a lot of your work. And was this a means to live vicariously through the characters that you illustrated, or simply a means of just poking fun at yourself, or both?
Probably a little of both. It came about almost accidentally because, like I said, I was trying to communicate with my friends from college. And once I got in there, standing next to the superheroes and talking to them, it's kind of cool. So I kept it going whenever it was applicable. It was nice enough for Marvel when I did the Marvel Age stuff to, allow me to appear in there alongside their characters. So, and then, of course, that Fred Hembeck destroys the Marvel Universe thing, which would be the first line in my old bit. But there you go. What are you going to do? It could be worse, right? So, yeah, fun stuff.
So, did you do the convention circuit a lot, or did you before COVID?
I've kind of, I used to do not a lot of conventions, not like some of these folks, but I would do them. But I've kind of been winding down in recent years, just doing like the local ones in Albany, which is a couple hours away. It's a lot of travel, and I'm not a big travel fan. And it's fun to do the drawings at the conventions, but I can do them at home, and I like meeting the people, but everything else around it not so much. I'm not a big guy to stand in front of a crowd and talk. I get a little nervous when I see the people looking at me. I'm not nervous now because I don't know who's looking at me, except you two guys.
Right.
But I don't like to get up in front of on a podium and dispense my views.
Well, I gotcha. So, but I was curious what receptions you generally got, in the sense that you don't fit neatly into the other comic artists out there, but you're definitely shown the love, and people you're generally, you get the same fanboy treatment that the others get, is what it kind of sounds like. Would that be correct?
Yeah, it does, especially when I'm like way out of my regular area. I remember in 2009, I went out to the Ohio convention, and it was just, people were like lining up for the day or two, like for both days, just constantly. It was great. You go to Albany, and it's like, yeah, we've seen you before. Maybe we'll come over and say hello. But when you go to somewhere that's like fresh territory, it's really cool. But again, like I say, I don't like to travel, so that might be in the past for now.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
Well, one of the things that I've been dying to talk to you about is one of your trademarks, which I always get a kick out of. And I think one time I had said something to you on Facebook, and you said squiggles for the giggles or something like that. You cracked me up.
Uh-huh.
I was like, this dude is so personable. And honestly, I really, before I asked this question, I really didn't expect, you know, uh, to have much interaction with you. I just was like fanboying, like, "Ooh, he's on Facebook. Let me send him a friend request," and I did. And you know, you're one of the few people who's a celebrity that would send me a happy birthday, and I you know, it made me feel a little certain kind of way. It made me feel good. I mean, you know, and I send you happy birthdays, and then we go. Then you know, I'll like some stuff that you post, and it's been cool. I hadn't met you, and but it felt like I kind of knew you a little bit, and that made you more personable to me, which was why when I asked you for this interview, I was like, I wonder what he's gonna say. I wonder if he won't be too busy and you know whatnot. And then when I got a response from you, you know, I my little fanboy heart started beating a little bit, and then I was like, oh wow, you know, this is cool. So I really am. I really am appreciative of you being here. But back to the Squiggles for giggles. So, your trademark curly cues, they were always a treat for me. I had in your work, so I enjoyed seeing them because I was thinking, wow, you know, that's just kind of cool the way you did knees and elbows. So, where did the idea for that come from, and what has the fan response been besides me? You know, mentioning it to you, what have other fans said?
Well, just like a lot of stuff, it all just kind of happened accidentally. I look back on the very first strip I did, and there are no squiggles. But I think in the second one, there are. And I believe it. I looked at the first page and I thought, you know, we need a little more art in this. We got to fill some more spaces. And I knew that in cartoony art, now I don't remember, it comes from either Don Martin, Beetle Bailey, or Dennis the Menace, all of which had like squiggles at some point. Dennis the Menace was usually in the elbows, and Don Martin was all over the place. I think I saw it in Beetle Bailey too, and those were the, you know, I loved Mort Walker's stuff. So I was hoping I could even try to get something along those lines. So yeah, I swiped it from somebody just to fill in some space on my drawings. I used to do the elbows too, but I got to the point where I said, well, that's a little gratuitous. We'll just do the knees. And it, yeah, it's something that people can go, yeah, that's the squiggle guy. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to have it. But I wasn't the first person to draw squiggles, let me tell you.
Right. Well, you're the best person that I've come across that's drawn squiggles.
Well, you need to look at some of the old comic strips a little closer. But okay, I appreciate it.
So you've talked about how way back when you were just starting, you had this sort of a dream to become a superhero comic artist, and that was what you had wanted to do, and then when that ended up not working out, that you went to the parody style, and now that is what you're known for. That's what you've become famous for. Do you ever kind of ever want to take another shot at trying to do a straight superhero thing, or do you ever think about what could have been, or do you have any thoughts there as far as, you know, should I maybe give it another go, or has that ever been an issue with you at this point?
I would say that I'm pretty content the way things are now. Mm-hmm. There was a time, I believe it was around 1990, I can't remember exactly, when Marvel had a book out, Marvel, it was filled with it was a giant book, 80 pages, and it was filled with a lot of 8-page stories. And Scott Lobdell, who was just starting out then, and knowing my, you know, I had used Brother Voodoo a lot in my Marvel Age strips. He said, I'm going to write a Brother Voodoo story. How would you like to draw it, but in a straight style? And I said, yeah, that would be kind of like an interesting thing to do. So I did. I penciled it, but they kind of gave it to one of their artists from the Philippines, and those guys really tend to redraw everything that's penciled. So, you know, probably made it look better. But that was my one and only shot at that. And I was like, okay, we've done it. I'm a mediocre comic book penciler. I don't want to do that. I want to be this goofy guy with the squiggles. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Okay.
Because I always say, I think if I pursued, maybe I would have been like a mediocre penciler who would have worked in comics for 2 or 3 years, and then when all these really good artists came along, I'd be out on my butt. But now I'm this guy who people like and call me up and say, "Hey, talk to me. You're a celebrity," and I'm going, "Yeah, okay, sure." But I appreciate it.
So, was there any feedback at the time when you did the straight issue? Did anybody? Did you ever hear anything back from?
No, not really.
Fans? Not really.
No, it was just like it was so totally redrawn. It didn't really look like my stuff. Well, I didn't really expect that I could, go, "Hey, look, I drew this." Well, not really.
Gotcha. All right. I didn't know if there was like a Ted Hembeck out there or something that maybe you did under a different name.
Yeah, no, I'm not drawing under an alias, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
The Squiggles would give it away.
That's right.
So you mentioned this before, and so I would like for you to give our listeners a little bit more of an in-depth perspective from your perspective. So tell us about Hembeck, the 1980 series, the Fantastic Four Roast #1, Marvel Universe according to Hembeck. Fred Hembeck destroys the Marvel Universe, and Fred Hembeck sells the Marvel Universe. Where did those ideas for those books come from, and what was your experiences in creating them?
Did you say the Fantastic Four Roast? Yeah. Okay, the Fantastic Four Roast, which I always get the chronology mixed up. I don't know if that came after. I think that came after Assistant Editors. That came from, the 20th anniversary of the Fantastic Four, and Jim Shooter had wanted to do like a roast, and he had assigned it to another writer, but he didn't really. I don't know who it was. He didn't like what they were coming up with, and so he said, maybe you could do this. Maybe you could. And I said, sure. Of course, I said, sure. And it was a fun thing to do, but it was an odd thing to do because the point was to use the regular artists of each character or group on each page. But seeing as how the artists had different schedules, they were done out of order. So I provided layouts for the whole book, but not actual dialogue. That came in afterwards. So I had to kind of put it together piecemeal, but I always thought that it came out, well. I like that. I like that book. And that's how that one came out. And that actually, Marvel has those masterwork books, the hardcovers and everything.
Right.
Well, the Fantastic Four volume that has the very first issues of John Byrne's run actually includes the Fantastic Four roast. They sent me a copy, which is how I knew, and I'm like, wow, I'm in the. I guess I'm part of the real run now because I'm in this hardcover book. So that's kind of fun. And of course, it got reprinted in the other two books. All of a sudden, it's getting reprinted constantly. And then another year or two went by. I don't remember how many years. And there was an odd controversy in the buyer's guide that Doug Mensch was upset that Jim Shooter was trying to replace all the characters, Thor with another character, Iron Man with another character. And it's like, he's destroying the Marvel Universe. How can this be? So Jim called up and says, why don't we do something with that? And I said, yeah, that sounds good. We'll do Jim Shooter destroys the Marvel Universe. He says, well, the head people don't really want my name in the title, but why don't we call it, Fred Hembeck destroys the Marvel Universe? I said, oh, gee, that would, I'm too, we can't do that. That's just, I said, okay, we'll do that. And then we went ahead, and that was a kind of a fraught thing, though. It was I had a number of people in my life pass away as I was working on this book about people getting killed, So it took longer than it needed to, and by the time it was done, Jim Shooter was gone, and they didn't want to publish it anymore, especially because I actually worked Jim into the storyline as well as my character. It was a 48-page book. A couple of years later, they did publish it, but in a 32-page format with all the Jim Shooter stuff more or less excised. You can go to my website, hembeck.com, where those actual pages of the framing story exist, and those were my favorite part of the story. And around the same time, shortly thereafter, someone said, why don't we, because I guess it sold well enough, why don't we collect some of the pages from the Marvel Age stuff you've been doing and make it, Hembeck sells the Marvel Universe, because each one's kind of like a promo. Although I tried not to get too, I tried to make more jokes than promo. Yeah. And that's how that came about. And that was edited by Jim Salicrup. Yeah, that's kind of what happened. Did I miss one? Is there anything else you wanted to know?
Well, I know that you also have a lot of stuff that I see on your Facebook page. A lot of like pinup drawings, and then you have some parodies of different covers of different books. Like you did one with the Fantastic Four when Namor is running away with Sue, and the rest of the Fantastic Four are chasing after them or whatnot. Those, a lot of that I see that you have listed on eBay. How has that been going for you? Do you do like sketches on demand, drawings on demand like that, and have a lot of people send in requests, and do you sell those on eBay, or how does that work for you?
Well, it works, amazingly well. My style and my storylines are pretty. They're not something the comic people are going to want every day. I mean, I had the long run in Marvel Age, but since then, not so much. So once eBay came along, I, tried selling some stuff on there, and it went over well. I get commissions. And it's just amazing that the people who read my comics years and years ago, like my stuff well enough to buy custom artwork, which is pretty much what you would call it. I did a lot of cover redos for a long time. I kind of put those aside now. I've been doing just little sketch cards for about the last year. I've been trying to avoid going into post offices for obvious reasons. I can just pop those out in the mail, out in the front lawn, front box out front. So yeah, no, it's without that, like I tell people, without the old eBay, I'd be greeting people at the local Staples. That'd be what I'd be doing at this point.
Yeah.
But I should say, I actually have my first assignment from DC Comics in, oh my God, years and years. I just got it the other day. They want me to do a Where's Waldo type parody page for a Stargirl spring break special featuring, I don't know how many hundreds of their Golden Age characters. So I have to start working on that the next few days.
Uh-oh.
That should be fun.
John, you doing okay over there? Are you swooning?
It's going to be challenging too, but we'll see how it goes.
I mean, you can't see it because it's down low, but my heart, it's a bit of a pass.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. We'll check back on that in a few months.
You actually set up my question perfectly. Social media gets a bad reputation sometimes, but I've had so many great social media experiences being able to kind of reach out to people I consider heroes and people I fanboy out with, and what's so great is that you have these conversations and these interactions that there's no way it would have happened in real life. There's no way this interview takes place if not for social media. I mean, that's just the reality, which just makes it such a delight for fans like John and myself. What's been your experience with social media, especially with the fact that you can put up so much with visual appeal and really, has that really helped your branding and your presence? It seems to have, but I wanted to see if you had a comment on that.
Yeah, my social media situation has always been positive. I've had maybe one or two bad experiences in the last, 10 or 15 years or whatever it is. And one was a whole big mix-up. But it's great to get my artwork out there for people to see. I mean, I'm selling it, yes, but at least I put it on Facebook. You can just look at it. It's free to look at.
There you go.
And I do like, I never met Doug Mensch, for instance, but when I first got onto Facebook, I was, became friends with him, and I got to write to him and tell him how much I enjoyed some Werewolf by Night stories that he wrote, and he wrote back, and I've done it with a number of other artists and writers who preceded me, who I grew up on, if you call this growing up. So yeah, no, it's been good. But like I say, without social media, I'd be like down at the local hardware store stocking shelves.
Well, it's funny where life takes you, where things progress in your life. So in 2012, I wrote a novel, and it was picked up by a small press publisher. And before that, I met this kid. I say he's a kid because he's not even, he's in his 30s now. So, I'm 50. So when I saw him, he was just a kid, a little long, straight-haired kid. Came into a bookstore when I was working in there, and he was asking about Elmore Leonard, and I happened to be a fan of Elmore Leonard, and we were talking. We got into a conversation, and then there was a book on the info counter, and it was by a local author here in Indianapolis, and we'd been promoting it or whatnot. His name Maurice Broadus. And so he said, "Hey, you got Maurice's book on there. Would you like to meet him?" And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, because at this time I started writing my own novel, and the next thing you know, he introduces me to Maurice, and then I start meeting all these other people through Maurice, and then I ended up meeting RJ that way too. We've been friends for a little over, it's 10 years.
About a decade.
Yeah. So it's like, and then I started getting a social media presence, and then I started meeting, I started sending out these friend requests to people that, I grew up fanboying, people who I admire, and they began accepting these. And I was like, I wonder if they saw that I wrote a book and I'm not just some Yahoo after them, trying to stalk them or anything like that. And so I'm like, okay, that gives me a little buy-in, but you have so many things that happen to you as a course of, one thing. So I wrote the book, and then it opened up all these doors to all these people that I started meeting and going to the conventions to sell my books. And then I started meeting, and you mentioned like Neil Adams. So like Neil Adams, he's been to every Indiana Comic Con, and RJ and I have been there to sell our books. Right. So I see him, and I come over. I had my son with me one time, and I said, I grew up on this guy's artwork, and check it out. It's just all fantastic. And of course, my son's not having the same reaction as I am having. And I met Neil, and he's like, yeah, and we talked for a little bit. So the next convention, I go over there, and he's like, hey, you gonna buy some of my artwork or what? But he remembered me, because I had this presence. And then I met the late great Denny O'Neil at one of those conventions, and it's just so amazing, the people that you meet, your heroes, and then the new people that are coming onto the scene. And social media has its pitfalls, just with everything, but it definitely is something that has broadened a lot of people's lives and gotten people together that normally would not have gotten together. So yeah, definitely.
Yay. Thumbs up social media.
Right. So, what do you got going now? What, any projects, any big projects you working on? Anything going on?
No big projects except that Where's Waldo parody page. I'm going to be pulling my hair out, which I have a lot of because I haven't gotten a haircut in over a year. Soon. I'm going to be working. I got an April 2nd deadline. I just got that on Friday. But I love to do the cards. I never knew that started that 10 years ago. I never knew that was going to go as far as it went. The fun thing about doing the cards is because, you do your Spider-Man, you do your Batman, you do your Superman. But then I have at the side of my drawing board, I have the DC Who's Who from the 80s and the Marvel handbooks. And I've practically drawn every character in each one. So I sometimes think I've probably drawn more different characters, even though they're not actually been published, than pretty much anybody else working in comics.
Yeah.
Some of these characters never. There was a character who appeared on the cover of an adventure comics, the Legion of Superheroes, because the Legion of Superhero fans are crazy. They love their Legion of Superheroes. So I drew him, and he only appeared in one panel on the inside, and I'm thinking, wow, nobody else drew this guy except me and Kurt Swan, and Kurt's not around, so I guess I'm the guy taking over. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because I was like, when you were saying how many characters you've drawn, I was like, well, you drew the Legion of Superheroes, and I can't even name all of the characters unless I stop and think about it because there's so many. And the only comparable thing that comes to mind from Marvel with regards to a group is like the X-Men or the Avengers. But the X-Men, there's like mutants that have come, gone. They were there for an issue, then they left, and I couldn't even begin to keep up with all of them. But the Legion of Superheroes, it's like you go all the way back, I think maybe late 50s, early 60s, and then forward, and it's like, wow, So
yeah, and they would keep changing their costumes, so I could like draw 5 different versions of the same character.
Right.
Which I've done,
Right.
That's fun.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And for a time, it was like they changed the character's costume every few months. It was like somebody, well, I'm tired of this, and ta-da! Here they come out with a new wardrobe of stuff, and Superboy pretty much stayed the same, but everybody else was a product of the time. Tyrock, you wouldn't probably have him in that kind of costume today.
No, I know that's an odd costume to draw. I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up our questions here, and it wraps up our interview. But I want to say that I have had a blast talking to you. I'm very honored to have met you and to have conducted this interview.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I'm very honored and pleased to be, chosen to be on your show, which is kind of a fun thing to do. Kind of a little outgrow. I get to talk to people about comics because I'm here at home with my wife, and she's heard enough about my comics, so it's good to talk to someone else who actually might be a little more interested. Her story, her interest is, not as big as it once was on the intricacies of Steve Ditko's inking versus his, penciling. I don't know. I'm just babbling now. I'm going to wrap this up with some sort of a.
But we understood, and that's the point, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
No, I want to echo what John said. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was a lot of fun. This was a great treat for us, and I'm looking forward to our continued interactions on social media and wishing you a happy birthday and all that fun stuff. Thank you for the great memories that you've given us up to this point. I look forward to seeing where it all takes you from here.
Okay, I'm hoping to keep. I'm just going to keep drawing. I'm not going to stop. So you guys keep looking. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, and John.
Oh, no problem. And if you're ever in Indianapolis for a convention, I know you don't travel much or whatnot, but if you just happen to be here, make sure you check in with us, and because we would love to meet you and just maybe hang out.
Not likely, but if it ever happens, I would be happy to.
Absolutely.
If you ever want to go to the Albany show, maybe I'll be up there.
Yeah. We're once things settle down, we're looking to do a little bit of traveling to some conventions. We usually do the tri-state area, but we may be inclined to stretch out to the East Coast at some point, sometime. You never know. So, where can our viewers and listeners find you if they want to find out more about your career and what you're doing, like with the Where's Waldo type thing?
Of course, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm on there on 2 different IDs, Fred Hembeck and Fred G. Hembeck. Mm-hmm. eBay. You can always find my stuff on eBay. I still have a website, which I haven't really. It's called Hembeck.com. There's a lot of interesting, I think it might be interesting stuff on there of both written material and artwork. I kind of stopped doing that because it was taking too much of my time, and they don't pay you for writing blogs. I finally figured out. But there's a lot of good stuff on there, I think, about my background and stuff. And anybody who's interested in seeing more about the fantastic, the Destroys the Marvel Universe, which is something I wish people, could have read in the original situation, the original publishing. That's on there. So yeah, go to Hembeck.com, go to Facebook. I'll give you my phone number later. But no, I'm just kidding about that. But yeah, I'm out. I'm out and about. You can find me. You guys found me, so
absolutely.
Most people can find me if they need to.
Absolutely. If anyone, most of our viewers know that RJ and I are authors. We have a lot of stuff going on, new books. We're with a new publisher. We've got some indie stuff going on. So if anyone wants to check out what I'm working on, you can check me out at johnfallenauthor.com, and you're more than welcome, Fred, to check me out there if you so choose. And where can they find you, RJ?
I am, as always, at rjsullivanfiction.com.
All right. And, of course, you can always check out the Two Towers Talk Show at twotowerstalkshow.com. We have our own website. You can also check us out on social media on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we are always around, so check us out. And if you are interested in a group of online community, primarily Facebook, for nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, but although anyone over 18 is welcome, check out OG Nerds. It's one of our partial sponsors for the Two Towers Talk Show. So just go ahead and give them a look. We're available on Facebook there through them, and just give them a check out, give them a shout out. So again, we thank the legendary Fred Hembeck for joining us today, and we look forward to maybe talking to him again sometime. That would definitely be interesting after the Where's Waldo. I'm interested in that. I'm waiting to see how that's turning out. So thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our listeners. And until next time, stay nerdy. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.